DJI, please, please make the next pocket camera weather sealed. There's a feature in the Osmo Pocket 3 that I don't take near enough advantage of, so I'm going to show you what it is and how I'm going to start using it to get a specific type of cinematic creative shot that's going to fit nicely amongst my other footage, just to kind of mix things up a little bit. But before I go into what that feature is, I first need to caveat something, because to use it effectively, I'm going to be using a set of ND filters. Could I get away with not having them? Sure. But the result is going to be so much more visually appealing when I do use a filter. Oh man, it literally looks like it's going to rain. Let me just show you. It looks like it's going to rain right over there. Those clouds do not look in my favour at all. With that said, the feature is a time lapse.
I'm a big fan, I love what you do.
Oh, thanks.
Right,
yeah. Thank you. So I'll walk you through what it actually is that makes the time lapse look cinematic, and then what settings I'll be slightly tweaking to achieve that look. That's it for me. I'm gonna have to stop because it's starting to get heavier now. It's so annoying. Take a look at these two clips. Which one for you looks more visually appealing? If, like me, you answered the one on the right, the reason for this is the use of an ND filter. The difference between the two clips is that the first one looks kind of jerky, robotic even, whereas the second clip looks smooth, it flows, and that's because of the amount of motion blur captured with each frame. The first clip just didn't have this because I didn't change my settings or use an ND filter. So what settings do I change? The most important one for this is the one that is going to allow you to adjust how much motion blur you're going to get in the scene. And for that setting is shutter speed. The higher the shutter speed, the less motion blur there's going to be, if any. Whereas the lower the shutter speed, which means the longer the shutter is going to be open letting in light, the more motion blur there's going to be in the scene. And there's just something about motion blur that makes something look a little bit more cinematic. I don't know what it is, but it's just one of those things that add to the cinematic look. So here I am back in the same spot. Feels like deja vu. But luckily the weather looks like it's actually going to stay nice and sunny all day. I've got 6 time lapses to shoot. I'm going to do each of them for about 10 minutes. Because I think, depending on the interval that I go for, it'll take me about 10 minutes to capture about 7 seconds of footage. I don't really need much more than that. Before I go into how I go about using the right shutter speed, I first want to talk about Motion Array, because I'm going to be using some of the assets from Motion Array to kind of bring the time lapse to life, because Motion Array has a variety of plugins for visual effects, color grading and motion graphics, plus another way to really capture that cinematic feel for the video, because time lapses just don't really capture audio, is to use sound effects, but the right ones. And Motion Array has a huge library of sound effects, and it's really easy to find what you're looking for. And to pair with that, there's also music. And again, Motion Array has a huge library of music with different genres, different moods, so you can pretty much choose whatever fits with that cinematic time-lapse clip and also the rest of the scene. So I've dropped a link in the description so you can check out Motion Array in a bit more detail, and you can also get $50 off when you use that link in the description as well. So thanks to Motion Array for sponsoring this video, and now I'm going to show you how I use the right shutter speed for my time lapses. Okay, so how I do this really just depends on the level of motion that I want in the scene, but it will also depend on how fast the action is in the shot, so how fast the subject is moving, for example. And I've just experimented with this just to see what works. But as soon as you reduce the shutter speed, the problem is that the scene becomes very overexposed, and it's at this point that the Pocket 3 needs sunglasses, which is basically ND filters. If filters are new to you, then it's worth noting that they're labelled in terms of optical density. The higher the number, the more dense the filter is, reducing even more light. So in shooting a time lapse, ideally you want the amount of time it takes for one image to be captured to be quite long. So this then means that you need an ND filter that's quite strong, because there's a lot more light with the slower shutter speed. You can kind of work out which strength of ND filter you need by counting stops, and that's basically just how exposure is measured. But if you have no idea what that means, or you don't know how to do it, or it hurts your brain like it does for me, then the other way that I do is I just start with the filter that's the strongest and I kind of just work my way backwards. And what I'm trying to do is make my EV meter read a specific value. So with the Osmo Pocket 3, I tend to have my EV meter set to -0.7. So I just want to choose a filter that is going to give me that value once I've changed the shutter speed. It's currently 1/4 of a second. I just want to see how much motion blur. Okay, there's a decent amount of motion blur in that. So when it comes to filming, all I do is set my time lapse up as I normally would in terms of the interval durations. But if I'm not too sure about a specific scene and the best interval, then I just choose one of the presets. Now there is one more trick to making time lapses look more cinematic. And so first, I want you to take a look at these two clips. Which one do you think looks more cinematic? If you chose the one on the left, then I totally agree, and that's because I chose to use a motion time lapse instead of just a static time lapse. So motion lapses just have more of an epic look to them rather than just a static time lapse. With the motion lapse, you will set it up in exactly the same way as you set a time lapse. The only difference is that you're gonna move the gimbal around, so you will start at one point and then you'll move it to another point and then you can move it to another point, just so that you can go from point A to point B, C. I think you can do it up to 4 points, but you just have different points along the way. So you start from one area of the scene and then you end up in another area. Now, if you want to pair this time-lapse footage with some regular B-roll footage, but you just so happen to be in a location which is a little bit boring, you can check out my next video where I run through how you can shoot B-roll footage if the location that you're in is a little bit uninspiring and boring.